it goes. Secret tunnel, through the mountains, secret tunnel.
What's up, guys? As you know, we're getting into chapter 1 of the Kabbalah, the origins of the Kabbalah. If you are new here, however, the reason that we're doing that is because the Jews of today basically have all of their spiritual, cultural, political, and religious ideals from the Kabbalah as well as the Talmud. But particularly the Kabbalah is where a lot of Jewish mysticism and spirituality comes from. The reason for being interested in this in the first place is because of all the social media outcry regarding the terrible sentiments, the terrible things that we are seeing that is written in the Talmud, specifically regarding Gentiles, pedophilia, and interestingly enough, today in the news, we are seeing secret tunnels, Jewish tunnels. But there's nothing really funny about that. As you can tell, the news is really spinning that story, but there is a much, much darker reality to what they're pulling up, like stained mattresses, baby carriages. It's not looking good. And what's also not looking good is how some of that is condoned in the Talmud, and also the Kabbalah as well, with this Jewish mysticism. So anyways, you understand the motivation. Let's dive right into it. Right, and just to be better to you as the listener, I'm actually going to ad-lib it a little bit. I'm going to read into the chapter, do research, and then feed you what I believe is very meaningful information. So in the beginning, it talks about this Jewish folk tale, particularly about 4 men. These are Jewish mystics, one that has had experience with whatever their venture is, and the other 3 who are fairly new. It says the 4 men lived at the end of the 1st century. For context, all of the apostles at this point are dead except for John, who writes Revelation. Now, this is during the early church that's spreading silently through the Roman Empire. This is kind of the time period. So the Jews at this time are now, they reject Christ, obviously, but they're also very much into these particular teachings, which are at this point fractured. They're spread apart. They're not collectivized into a one Kabbalah, a one book yet, because that happens in the medieval period. It goes on to say, the most famous was Akiva, best known of all the rabbis of the Talmud, the great Jewish compendium of law and ethics. His companions were Azazi bin Zoma and Elisha bin Abuya. Bin is not a name. It means the son of. When they entered the Pardes, bin Azi looked at what we do not know and died. There's symbolic speech here, guys. So what I have come to find is that what they do not know is essentially speaking to the idea of gaining unearned wisdom, right? The Kabbalah, especially early Jewish mystics, they were involved with psychedelic trances. So this to me sounds like they were in a place where they could earn unearned wisdom, speaking to something or someone particularly spiritual, like a demon perhaps, or an angel, right? Now, they say we don't know the meaning of the word Pardes, and that's P-A-R-D-E-S. I looked it up. The actual etymology is from Persia, and in the Persian etymology from this Babylonian Judaism, it means the garden. And the garden is not a physical place, it's a spiritual place in this sense. So they are speaking to a fallen angel in all reality. So anyways, Ben Azi was new. He has not had this experience before, and he died. It goes on to say, Ben Zoma looked and was afflicted by the experience. Elisha bin Abuya looked and cut the shoots, meaning he abandoned his faith. Only Akiva entered in peace and came out in peace, because she had experienced it before. It is a very short story. Interestingly, an introduction. It's likely that Akiva had made the trip before and that the 3 companions were novices. He was the only one who took care to look, and in one version of the story, he even warned the others against it. His warning, however, was too opaque. Quote, "When you get to the stones of pure marble," he said, "do not cry, water, water, for one who speaks falsehood will not endure." Clearly his companions didn't understand what he meant. It goes on to say, "This tale is well known because it is one of a very small number of episodes in early mainstream Jewish literature that deal with the occult. Death and madness befalling travelers in a mysterious place give it a sort of malign appeal, a fascination not unlike that of a ghost story told around the campfire. The story appears in the Talmud as a justification for the religious ban on occult speculation." And again, this is from the sect of Babylonian mysticism, Babylonian Judaism. "It is a cautionary tale to warn people of the dangers of dabbling in things they don't understand." There you go, guys. I literally made the analogy of putting yourself in the place where you are obtaining unearned wisdom in the trance. Composed between the 3rd and 9th centuries, which is the medieval timeline, these texts describe the experiences of Jewish mystics trying to undertake journeys to the palaces of heaven. You can understand that symbolism, guys. We do not know what sort of people these mystics were, nor are we ever told why they were prepared to go through the rigorous mental training and physical deprivation necessary for these journeys of the soul. So that's probably some very long fasting incorporated with psychedelic drug taking. What are we told is that once they are temporarily freed from the constraints of their physical bodies, they become endowed with profound prophetic insight, an insight which disappears when they return to their natural state. What's that term when people can see themselves sleeping or walk like in their spirit, but they can see that they have left their bodies behind? It'll come to me. Prompted by curiosity, their journeys are a quest for understanding what lies beyond. Now here's where it gets interesting yet again. The text contains these accounts of heavenward voyages, which are known today as Hekalat, which I'm not going to even try that with a Jewish pronunciation. Hekalat. Anyways, Hekalat means palace or palace literature. So when you won't see this word, but Hekalat basically means the wisdom and recordings from when these Jewish mystics went into the beyond. It's called palace literature, or quite literally, wisdoms that they derived from fallen angels. Because who is going to help these Jewish mystics when they reject Jesus Christ? It's going to be fallen angels. So they are getting legitimate wisdom, but they are not getting the deepest of truths from God because he does not support them. But obviously, the legions of Satan do. So, again, this is around the time when the early church is settling. So this palace literature is literally unearned wisdom, guys. It all connects. It goes on to say, they are a hodgepodge of many different texts, composed over several centuries, many of which have only survived in incomplete or even garbled form. So literally just imagine someone from today's culture trying to interpret their mystical journey on LSD, and they're just like, I'm trying to write it down, and it's just all garbled. Like, that's literally what they're saying. It's like some of these manuscripts are in garbled form. Like, the whole journey really couldn't be articulated to the paper. They are Jewish mystical texts, but they are not yet what we would call Kabbalah, right? It's all just separated manuscripts later put together in the medieval period. It will be several centuries before the name comes into use. Neither are they the earliest examples of Jewish mystical writings. It continues to get more interesting. It says, starting in the 3rd century BCE, seers, like, mystical seers, had composed descriptions of heaven and hell, terrified their readers with apocalyptic visions, and forewarned them of the events due to take place at the end of time. John wrote his apocalyptic visions in the 1st century, recording the book of Revelation, and only 2 centuries later these seers are getting their own version of the apocalypse, almost as if the fallen angels have their own download for the seers to spread to this sect. So it literally looks like John got his download from God, and then you have the synagogue of Satan getting their download from Satan. How interesting, right? All mystical revelations had been granted by God and the angels. Yeah, hold on a second, guys. All mystical revelations have been granted by God and the angels to humans of their choosing, even if they hadn't asked to be chosen, even against their will. The palace literature makes the moment when people stopped hoping for a revelation from above and set out for themselves to snatch a glimpse of heaven. So literally violating free will if need be, not waiting for God to deliver the message, but to seek out and gather the message yourself, out of selfishness, out of self-interest. But these people are being used. These people are being used by the forces of evil. But yeah, the reason I stopped there, they were giving reference to the book of Enoch, particularly Mount Hermon and the fallen angels that gave wisdoms to humans we didn't yet deserve and slept with human women against their will as well. All right, I can go down a whole nother rabbit hole talking about, like, yes, they did force themselves upon human women in the antediluvian period, but yes, there was also, assumably, women that allowed it to happen, right? Like, imagine a lowercase g God walking into your house and saying, hey, let's make a kid, let's make a demigod. That's the more true ends of Greek mythology, right? The archetypal sense becoming reality. That's the more real side to that. But anyways, I digress. I'm going to stop after this because I'm unpacking a lot of information here. It signals the moment they began constructing esoteric rituals, often involving severe ascetic deprivation, with the intention of discovering what goes on within the celestial spheres. Now, guys, these Jewish mystics are obsessed with numbers, their value, and also the magnetic pull of planets. Like, think of the esoteric Kabbalistic meanings behind Saturn or Venus, Saturn, Saturnalia, Satan. This is regarding the beginnings of those archetypal creations. However, also their more real uses, their more real value. Isaiah's description of his vision was the earliest recorded glimpse of what the inside of heaven looked like. But it was the later prophet Ezekiel who provided much more detail of what a visitor was likely to see upon arrival at the heavenly gates. Unlike Isaiah, Ezekiel lived after the Babylonians had destroyed Jerusalem and its temple. With his compatriots, he lived as a refugee by the river of Babylon, where they dreamed of their return to Zion and the reconstruction of their temple, which is actually going on today. Isn't that interesting? The later part of Ezekiel's book is taken up with a detailed description of what he believed the rebuilt temple would look like. I swear, if it looks just like the one they're building now, I'm going to freak out. His blueprint for the building was based upon what he saw in prophetic visions. In the very first chapter of his book, he tells us that while he was sitting by the river, the skies opened, a whirlwind raged from the north, and in the midst of cloud, flame, and lightning, heaven appeared. Ezekiel saw 4 winged creatures flashing with fire and cackling with ionic charge. Each creature had 4 faces, of a human, an ox, an eagle, and a lion. See Arthur Kwan Lee's recent painting for reference. The creature moved on wheels, turning within other wheels. There's your ophanim or throne. The circumference of their rims studded with eyes. The whole construction was joined together as one piece. Its life force was its wheels, and whichever direction it proceeded, it was always heading forwards. When it moved, the beat of the creature's wings sounded like a tempest of rushing waters, like the tumult of an army swelling to an almighty crescendo. When it paused, the wings subsided. Linked by their wings, the 4 creatures and their wheels formed the base of a sapphire throne, or chariot, above which Ezekiel perceived an indescribable presence that he called divine glory. I'm going to stop there. So yeah, guys, we're really getting into it. I've already had a lot to say based on the few pages I've read into chapter 1. I hope you've gathered some meaningful information, some additional depth regarding the beginnings of the modern Jews of today and what to think about that with regards to the chosen people. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that. See ya.
Oh, there it goes. Secret tunnel, secret tunnel, through the mountains, secret, 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 secret tunnel.